Hi, and welcome to the Locker Room Podcast. One of the things that we're looking to do over the next however long our podcast goes on for is having a live discussion with a coaching expert that we have in our toolbox, in our fold. So today this is the introduction of our new feature that we're going to call the Coach's Corner with our coach of almost 30 years in the public school, Gregg Johns. You might remember him from our podcast we did a couple weeks ago. But once a month, a couple times a month, we're going to just sit down and talk about topics that we think coaches need to hear in order to be the best version of themselves as believers and also as coaches. So to kind of get us started today, Greg, one of the topics that's been kind of weighing on my heart as I'm a current coach is, what do you think is the best way to have a tough conversation about maybe playing time or how you envision the role of a player on a team that you're coaching?
Yeah, I think that's something that we all have to work on as coaches. I also feel like it kind of goes back to something that I said towards the end of our podcast last time, which was being authentic and our players knowing that we genuinely care about them beyond the sport. And I think it's easier to get buy-in from them when you're asking for them to maybe change their role or adjust their responsibilities if they know that you care about them first. And I think that that authenticity and that level of love garners that ability to communicate during those hard things, because we know that if players are disgruntled about certain things or being asked of certain things, then chances are, if they have that support system at home, that support system, by and large, is going to side with them,
Right.
And it's going to support them in that. So they're going to be being fed what they want to hear versus what we might tell them, which is something they don't want to hear. But we encourage them to embrace that role because that's what's required of them to make the team better, even though it's something they might not like to hear or might not want to do.
Right. So it's in those moments, what do you find for you, from your experience of almost 30 years now, almost?
You keep saying that, it makes
coaching.
you feel old.
I know, but the reality is you got, it's actually 28 years, right?
28 total. I've served as a head coach in many capacities, an assistant coach in some capacities. But yeah, 28 years in the public education, coaching at various levels, head coach and otherwise. Yeah.
So a lot of experience, but that's not to make you feel bad. But the
It makes you feel bad. It makes you feel old, but that's fine.
What do you find is the best way to have those communications with your players? Is it to wait for them to come to you? Is it to be the leader and go out of your way to initiate the conversation with them? Kind of what do you find is the best practice of having those maybe role-changing conversations or something along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, most kids, I think, are not going to come to us directly. We're gonna visualize that they're happy, mad, sad, or glad based on their body language, maybe a comment that they might make, but they're not going to come to us directly with a lot of things because they're just not wired that way in terms of communication in their world. Maybe it's going to be a text message, maybe something like that. More than likely, we're going to get an email from a parent if they're upset or that type of thing. In rare cases, the parent's going to say, hey, you know what? They're the coach, you're the player, you figure it out. So I think the best way to do that is to get ahead of it. If you're going to make a change or there's going to be some sort of an adjustment in their role, be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I'm not sure we're going to do this, but if we do this, this is why. And give them and lay it out for them ahead of time. For example, a player who's been a consistent starter, all of a sudden you're looking at them in a role that maybe they're going to come off the bench. You don't wait to 5 minutes before the game to tell them, hey, just so you know, you're not starting tonight. You come to them at least the day before, if that's something that's been in your head, and explain to them why and why you feel like it's the better move for the team. They might not love it, but at least they've got that time to process it.
Sure. And as on the other side of it, right? So as the coach, like, what should we expect from our athletes when we do come to them and have these tough conversations? I mean, obviously they're 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. They're not going to necessarily be, oh, okay, that sounds great, coach. So like, how should we respond to something like that? If there is a little bit frustration, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing that I openly tell the boys is I expect them to want to be starters and to want to play every game as long as they've put in what's required of them in terms of off-season training, practice accountability, practice work ethic. I expect them to think, hey, I should be one of the best guys out there. I deserve to be on the field. So I want them to expect to play. I don't expect them to like to be told that they need to assume a different role, especially if it takes minutes away from them. But what we do expect from them is to have a little self-reflection and the ability to be like, okay, maybe let me try to see where coach is coming from and let me try to understand that. And then from there, we can have an open dialogue about their position and stay away from we always want to deflect the conversation when the athlete is saying, well, I feel like I'm better than him and this is why. We don't talk about him because he's not in this conversation. We talk about you. And I think that's important to be able to, verbalize that. And at the same time, as we've said before, and we said this in the podcast, was, at the level that we coach at, we are trying to equip our guys for life after high school. And we do a lot of taking life as an athlete and then life as an employee or a boss or whatever, and saying, hey, this is how this translates into what you might face when you get into your career, where your boss might expect you or want you to do a role where maybe you're going to excel at, but you don't love it, but it's for the betterment of the company, the organization, whatever the case is, and find a way for them to understand that balance, that introspective position of, I need to do this because it's better for the whole as opposed to what's better for me.
Yeah. And in your experience, what's the most effective way to be able to have those tough conversations? Is it, I can see it from just, coaching with you for the last few years and kind of implementing what I know is, in order to be able to have those conversations, there has to be a level of trust, and you actually have to know your players to the point where you're able to have those tough conversations. How hard would it be to have those conversations if you weren't taking time outside of the gym, outside of practice, outside of those designated times? Like, what's required to be able to have that kind of culture?
Yeah, I think that's just a huge part of the life component of being a coach with your athletes, which is beyond the 2 hours a day that you see them, is being in tune with, not being necessarily meddling in their business, but being in tune with what's happening at home. Being in tune with, if they are in a relationship, what's going on there? What's the climate there? How are their academics? Right. They have a part-time job. How's that going? Are they going to work? Are they making excuses for not being there? And just trying to just, navigate that as well. And that will help them, I think, to realize, like, coach cares about me. Coach just doesn't care about athlete me, goal scorer, point scorer, assist me. Coach cares about me, and my whole person.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that a lot of times as an athlete, as a former athletes and now coaches, it's like, I know for me, I always struggled. Like, does coach only care about is my value to coach only what I can do on the floor or on the field or in the game? Or does he actually care about me beyond that?
Yeah, it's funny you talk about like the former coach, and today, my least favorite experience of my entire day today was actually going into Walmart and actually having to purchase items because we were going to do a grocery pickup and we're getting bad weather. Ran into a high school teammate of mine. We graduated together, and we got talking about my high school coach and just some of the things from back in the day where we didn't even talk about wins and losses, although our teams were pretty successful. We talked about just some of the stuff with him practicing with us, and how we've run into him later in life, and he actually saw him, and they spoke at a golf tournament coach came and he talked to my players at our homecoming game this year, and just how, it wasn't about, oh man, you remember this game and how great we did and we won this game. It was just about, just coach, and how he was still the same dude, and how we just both just still, loved and admired him. And even now he's, obviously much older, and this guy and I are both now in our early 50s. And so just the impact that he had on us is far beyond high school.
Yeah. So that just goes to show, that's something that we're looking to do, every once in a while, maybe once a month, a couple times a month, just to have an opportunity to sit down with a coach who has seen a lot. I won't say he's seen it all, but there's a lot probably that he's seen that wouldn't surprise him. And just having those tough conversations with, how do you have those? So that's kind of what this was. So welcome again to the first ever Coach's Corner with Coach Gregg Johns. And we can't wait till you're back the next time to have these conversations about how can I be the best possible coach while loving Jesus, while showing my team Jesus, and also still being successful on the field or in the court or whatever your sport might be. So thank you. We'll see you next time.